Words of Color is an innovative virtual event hosted by poets Derrick Weston Brown and Alan W.King. Presented by the Hurston Wright Foundation, the event features the work of Black published writers presented as theatrical monologue performed by Black actors from the CFA Repertory Theatre. After performance of the work, hosts Brown and King engage the author in an interview to explore and discuss their work. Welcome to Words of Color.
Welcome to Words of Color. I am one of the co-hosts of Words of Color, which of course is an amazing show produced by and put together by Hurston Wright, which brings authors' words to life through the performances of actors. And co-host, Brother Alan King. How you doing, sir?
I am fine, brother, and I am so happy to be co-hosting this event with you.
Let's introduce you all to Remica Bingham-Risher. And so Remica Bingham-Risher, a native of Phoenix, Arizona, is an alumna of Old Dominion University and Bennington College. She is a Cave Canem Fellow and an Appalachian poet. Among other journals, her work has been published in the New York Times, the Writer's Chronicle, New Letters, Callaloo, and Essence. She is the author of Conversion, winner of the Naomi Long Magic Poetry Prize Award, What We Ask of Flesh, shortlisted for the Hurston Wright Award, and Starlight and Error, winner of the Diode Editions Book Award, and her newest work, her first book of prose, Soul Culture, Black Poets, Books and Questions That Grew Me Up, will be published by Beacon Press this year. She's currently the Director of Quality Enhancement Plan Initiatives at ODU and resides in Norfolk, VA with her husband and children. All right.
Thanks, y'all. Hey.
Hey.
Thanks everybody for coming. Listen, Derrick and Alan and I go way, way back. So we might just start cutting up around here, but I appreciate folks for coming and spending the hour with us. Thank you so much. This should be fun.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. All right. So I guess just to open things up before we actually get to the acting out of your work and your pieces, I just wanted to know, generally, how are you, we're all gathering together, virtually. That's kind of been the name of the game as of late. But how have you, I guess, as many of your colleagues or fellow artists, how have you adjusted to this format of gathering people together virtually, when a lot of us are used to being in person, with people gathered around where a step away or speaking to them from a podium? How have you adjusted to the virtual space of performance and readings?
I mean, that's a good question. I've been looking at this as an opportunity for us. COVID has taken a lot away from us, including a whole lot of people we love. But something that it's given us is a chance to make spaces for each other, and to be together, even when we're very far away. I'm in Norfolk, Virginia. Alan and Derrick are up near DC. I see folks in the room from as far away as London. Hey, cousin Ariana Benson, I see you over there.
Wow. Okay.
So there are, so these are things that would not be possible without the gift that COVID has given us, which is making a way out of no way. We're not going to stop this art. We're not going to stop sharing with each other. We're not going to stop bolstering each other and encouraging each other just because we can't be in the same room. And I'll tell you, Alan was just mentioning that we had our first kind of meetup in 2 years when we did that panel for Tim Siebels, that tribute panel in Philly. And I tell you, I don't know if I've ever seen a room where 50 poets are happier to be together. Yeah. So one thing COVID did give us is a real appreciation for
yes.
when we get to be in the same space, because we were just giddy to be together. So I'm grateful that, I've gotten to be fed from all over the world during this time when it was a very difficult time, when I was super anxious and having trouble writing at times. And this was the way that I got to hear craft talks, and I got to hear people cut up, and I got to hear people read poems. So we adjust on the fly any way that we can to get the word.
All right, thank you.
And speaking of hearing people read poems, the format of this event is, we're going to have some actors reading your work. And so how does it, as a poet, we're used to reading our stuff. You're like, our work we know the natural rhythms of our work. So, to go into a process where somebody else is going to read it and have to try to interpret and try to find those rhythms, how has the experience been for you?
Exciting and scary. So I'll tell the truth, we'll give the audience a sneak peek. This program, thanks to Hurston Wright and their diligence, came together very quickly. So this wasn't like I got to sneak peek and hear some of the actors or give them any cues for the poems. I haven't heard the poems. I'm hearing them with you all tonight. So there was no collaboration except for the fact that I got to look through my latest book. All the poems are from Starlight and Error. And just think about some ways that some of the poems talk to each other in ways that I hadn't thought about before. So I had to come up with kind of some sets and think about, what kind of narrative arc might this create for somebody who's trying to embody the poems or act out the poems. So we're going to all get this smoke at the same time. I'm excited to see it.
I think that's the first time I've heard "get this smoke" in a poetry setting. But that's how you do it. I know.
Listen, I know these actors are coming with it, so I'm excited. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see. Without further ado, shall we head on to the debut of the first reading? I believe the actress is Karen L. So let's go.
Distant Lover. Dear Shirley, they sent us somewhere else I can't mention. If I disappear, I guess they'll tell you where we've been. Might as well be another planet. Air's so thick, it's like we're learning to breathe again. We see things in trees when nothing's there. No one admits it, but we're scared of what we left behind. On recon, walking point, everybody's jumpy. White boys acting funny, Agent Orange getting into bloods. They keep saying the war is over, but the world ain't changed that much. The other night, we saw some boys as small as ours turn to nothing in the road. No one knows where minds are scattered. All our time is borrowed. I've been thinking about that night we met at Bob's Lounge. You in that thigh-high dress and me gone with one glance. You stood up slow and easy, pulling everybody's strings. Over here, guys want to forget everything, be left alone. You remind me I want to be alive for something. I'll call when we get orders home. Distant Lover. Dear Bobby, Cambodia, Vietnam, it's all on the news. If I watch too long, the lines run together and I can't tell who's who. My sister's been my company, especially Dee. We use an old map to show the boys where you might be. I listen to music, passing time. Marvin singing sweet in this new cut. He say, when your lover leaves you, you got nobody. A lonely hours come over you. He's live on stage somewhere far like you, and those girls screaming behind him must know he's telling the truth. Remember that day we left the boys with my mama when the bank gave us that loan? The rain came down, drops big as pennies, and we didn't care, walked all the way home. When we got back to Dunbar Street, we were a mess. Hair slick, clothes muddy, our shoes and hopes in your hands, and we just laughed. Oh, people couldn't understand what it meant to have someone believe in what we started. We danced ourselves silly, soaked as we were, through and through. The rain came down like that today. Days like this, I sure do miss you. Young, small, and growing, often violently. Music can't save you, but it marks a place, and the knife can be a fierce negotiator. I learned this reckoning from the women raising me. My mother's 4 sisters, my father's 3, grandmothers, play cousins, surrogate aunties. They crowd the table, throwing cards and customs, warbling. I take a shining to everything. They allow me to hear the whiz and kingdom melodies, Motown, Handel, every haunt and opening. They tell me singing is my gift. Use it for rapture, not apology, and to cut any boy who messes with me. At weddings, funerals, school assemblies, my voice is their tender yield. Boys brave enough to try me always learn what I'm learning to be. A straight blade, a canticle, bigger than their scattering curve and contour of mother's hands, echo, aurora, an orchestra, a galaxy. Baby, be mine. The song is honey mint on his tongue. In his sleep, he answers questions. There'll be no more mountains, and gives commands. Make sweet love this way. Blind root worker making turnstiles of us. As I wake, he spins into my hollows, half dreaming. And when good sense plagues me, fear of what could be, he is still beside me, singing, as long as we believe.
I see that smile.
Remica, hands, yes, let's give the applause, yes. Hey,
Oh, that
applause.
was amazing,
Karen.
Karen.
Wow, thank you, Ken.
So let me jump in here. So I had asked this question before, but after hearing it now, I'm gonna ask it again. So how does it feel having your poems talk back to you, but from a different voice?
It was, first of all, it was gorgeous. I love your nuance, Karen. You understood humor, and what we're doing is signifying half the time. So I'm trying to build in, these are all love poems, right? So I'm trying to build in voices of generations of people. So those first poems are my aunt and uncle writing letters back and forth to each other when he was in Vietnam, right? And then, poems about like just our upbringing and how whole groups of people, villages raise us, right? But to hear it in somebody else's voice with somebody else's inflection is to also hear the things you miss in your own work. I heard like some things that were more humorous, and then I also heard like, oh, if you bend the line that way, you get a completely different reading. So, I mean, it's a real gift to kind of get your voice given back to you in a different way.
Wow. I'll just jump in real quick before we get to, to the next, segment. I remember there was one time, and I think Alan was present. We were in Tony Medina's classroom, and he said, when you write a poem that once it's published or you put it out into the world, it's not yours anymore. And I remember arguing with that. I said, no, it's always mine. It's always mine at the time. But now I kind of see it differently. So with these particular poems that were used, I was wondering, do these poems, now that you're hearing them being spoken back to you, do they still feel like yours, or have you very much done the letting go and letting the world have these poems and people to interpret them the way they wish?
That is so interesting. And let me just let you in on a little bit of like real life work here. As this is happening, I'm also working on a new book, but the press they're doing an audio book. But it probably won't be me reading the book. It's going to be an actress. And so it's a real exercise in like letting go, because it's a memoir. There's lots of poems in it, many that are of the same ilk as these kinds of poems. So in some ways, the poems feel like they're mine, because when I hear the lines, I'm thinking about how long it took for me to get to that iteration of the line, because I'm revising constantly, right? And I'm also, I'm one of those people, if I'm not the I in my poem, you definitely know it, but mostly I'm the I, right? Like, so there are real personal connections in many ways to those poems. And so hearing it in a different voice in this moment makes them feel half mine and half the world's, right? Because I
Mhm.
know some of the background that the world will never know, but I have to get comfortable. Oftentimes, as artists, we have to get comfortable with our work being out of our hands once we give it to the world. So it's half mine, half the world's kind of at this moment.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, are you ready for another moment? You ready for
Yes,
another moment? All
I'm
right.
ready.
All right. Well, next up is Jacqueline Yoon. Let's see.
Starlight and air, cleaning house. There's a moment in her life when my aunt curses and rants in the name of God, uses hands and knees to abandon prayer, and turns to scrubbing boards for salvation. Her husband, covetous fool that he is, has taken up with Miss Karen, a married woman who lives in the cul-de-sac 2 streets away. Karen has watched my aunt's children, brought her paper to the door, pledged friendship, fine print in hand. After she has entered my uncle fiercely, sliced through his stomach with a kitchen knife, we find my aunt clutching a sponge and old bucket on her knees, scrubbing carpet like she is bringing sandpaper to rough wood. There's blood on the floor, she says, and doesn't rise. Though we explain the police are waiting and the children have been loaded into a safe woman's car. I've been to her house, she says. The brio from the sponge cutting into her hands, her blood mixing with his blood, bleach from the bucket water clearing her knuckles of meat. She keeps a nasty house, and Lord knows, she says, leaning closer to the faded stain until her lips nearly touch the ground. No woman should live that way. Venom. The last time I find myself lying between the times we make love, I run my fingers along my own thigh in hopes that the door will reopen, miraculous in its forgiveness, its remarkable swing, its willingness unlike mine. I can't keep looking at loneliness, trying to call it freedom. But when you re-enter, I have to rise to meet you, clear the locks and bolts meant to keep the safe distance I pledged. These are the times I think of my mother, her bitter duty, the nights my father ambled back towards us, his reverent silence, her reluctant undoing, the fastened chain swinging open. I can't keep looking at loneliness, trying to call it freedom. This history we call love is no longer a remedy. I refuse you, as you have me for spite, little less. All night you beckon from the other side of the door, but I hear only my father's voice. Muffled, full of regret for the irreparable. The skipping record, the needle's worn slide. I can't keep looking at loneliness, trying to call it freedom. The flock of your pasture. Who are the sons of the gods and their fury? What witness is given through fiber and blood? Here is a boy I love, 16 and filling in, who used to covet miniatures, building farms or tiny zoos, herding them from room to room in their almost living. He is a running back now, big cousin, fast as blame, Kool-Aid smile on a hardening face. Awakened one morning by arguing, his brother, sister, and I wait to be taken to the school bus. We know better than to interrupt grown folks who tell us to run in another direction if a fight breaks out, but never mention our own houses, faces we kiss and carry, arms that cradle us, battering or bracing the other. Forcing himself between his parents' wild cacophony, what choice did the boy have but to learn to love by taking blows? His father shouting apologies, his mother's indiscriminate swinging, bruising the boy's chest and shoulders until, startled by the sight of him, something like a mirror shattering, she drops her arms and passes out. How small he seems in his inexperience, and how large growing into who he must become. His face, like his father's, etched in thinly woven misery. What shepherding can be done? What tending when everyone has seen how much saving will need? What will the boy carry besides the folded body of his mother? What will he hold in the years to come but the weight of the heart in his hands? East River Drive, paved with starlight and air, those Augusta hills held what little we'd saved. Red clay flaring as we coursed the highway or settled into the driveway of the house soon to be taken, lost to the needle's sharp misery. There was always the sound of the black and white cassette rewound until our street was East River Drive. My father, the melancholy horn, my mother somewhere behind the snare. I kept time in the seat next to her as we searched, hoping to find someone other than who we knew would appear. A stranger, pretending he hadn't gone missing, that there was nothing extraordinary about him, that the melody cued and replayed wasn't a warning. There'd be many more nights like this, that the road would be so long.
Wow. Wow.
I think we need a moment.
Give me a second. Come on.
Yeah, I'm being fed twice, you know,
I was
like
about to say, look, y'all shout it out in the chat. I see people like, bravo, amazing, beautiful. They were
wow.
shouted out for Karen too. So,
Oh,
give
yeah.
these actors your love in the chat, please.
Yes, indeed.
Mhm.
All the applause. Riveting. Oh, goodness.
Oh
Oh,
man.
I mean, now it's becoming more like a play, like something you would see on
yes.
stage, right?
Like choreo
Like,
poems.
because
Yeah.
Yep.
she's like not only gesturing and like
Yes.
vocalizing, but her body is becoming part of the poem. So I
Yeah.
mean, we're really like, I mean, leaps and bounds. Folks are amazing.
Yeah, I've been writing down a few references. Like the first section with Karen L. I had with I think the first piece I had like Thomas and Beulah. You know,
Ooh.
then like you just referenced, Alan, a choreo poem. For colored girls.
Yeah. That's how it was all hitting me. Like, and it's appropriate because it's three women reading, about full body, poems coming from a singular voice, and it's just amazing the different moods and even the music, and like the music gets kicked up a notch in the lines with the inflections and even the performance, physical,
the dramatic pauses. Yeah, all of that. Yes, indeed. There's a term that the young people use. I think I'm old enough to say the young people now, but the term, it hits different.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to talk about how what hits different for you from this section that Jacqueline you just did. What hit different? I mean, thinking from the poems to performance. Yes.
What's interesting is you guys can't see, but I'm holding the book. I'm like actually turning to poems and I'm kind of looking at the set as they read. First of all, like, I mean, some of these poems, like, they are tongue twisters as well. Like, you all are doing an amazing job just with the diction. Like, poets, like, we really value the word, so it's going to be the right word, but it's often very difficult to kind of like loop things together. And what I've realized watching and listening is when I was asked to put together these poem sets, in each set, there's at least one poem that I've never read aloud before myself from the book. And I've been touring this book now. It's been out since 2017. So, 5 years, minus COVID. So, that's why it feels like 3. I was like, why does it feel so short? COVID happened, right? But I was still reading poems, but you get into a rhythm, you get into your favorites, you get into, what hits really well and, works well with, the conversation that you have in between. So in each set, not purposely, I don't think, I was really just trying to create an art, but there's poems that I've never heard aloud from my own voice in a group. So like Jacqueline was reading The Flock of Your Pasture. Karen was reading Baby Be Mine. The Flock of Your Pasture is about the son who interrupts his parents fighting. And there was so much rage there. And I thought it was a quiet poem. And then when I heard it aloud, I was like, no, she right. Right? So it's so funny that other people add to what you thought was kind of like the emotion that you built in, or the way that they encounter the work sometimes shifts the tone. And I love that. Indeed. I'm for it.
All right. I'll just say real quick, like the performances also kind of bring home like what we learned so much when we're crafting our poems, like the importance of line breaks. Because and how people interpret the line and what they do with it. So,
yeah. And they're just doing amazing. Like looking at the poems on the page, like they're embodying them beautifully, like not shifting the context from the intent, just building on the intent. So they're doing a beautiful job.
Wow. Masterclass. I'm telling you. Masterclass. All right. We have one more passage to go this time. Let's welcome Adrienne Powell.
Starlight Error. Equal measure. Daughters teach you everything. I know this, but still ask my husband if he can braid my hair because he's been away from his daughter 9 months now and is sick with idleness. We are in the kitchen. I just returned from a trip. 3 more nights he's learned to live alone. And my hair is one large mess. Nothing like his daughter's in the school picture after hours of clips and combs and care. Just as he always said it, he says, yes, while I part. 2 equal measures, then condition the length. Make it easier to tame. He stands beside me as the waiting season. When he suffers the mass, fashioning thick plaits, he says, lean and please, and some words in between, but I am taken up by the tenderness of him. His hands, most like those of familiar women, learned and unafraid. Solstice. When you discover you are old enough that nothing has novelty, you live with teenagers who've learned little more than to abhor everything. I hate daylight savings time. I hate Virginia. I hate being here. They hate the dark that comes on early and wonder what other secrets we've been keeping on this side of the world. If we can steal their light and time without warning, what joy is there to be had? What can they love without fear? What else will we reveal in the quick of an hour, the shortened days, all their hurried years? Training or a weapon? When I am 10, months before my father teaches me patiently, my uncle throws me into the pool's deep end, yelling, "Sink or swim," like the Marine he will always be. I sputter and float like a flat engine. His hands smack the water. I claw at the edge of intricate design until I am angry and alive. He briefs his children and me, as I am the fifth child he must carry, on what has been drilled into him. Sometimes the body must be broken to endure. He is a damaged child, though he thinks we don't know it, have forgotten perhaps the stories told when he leaves the room. We all trace the scars of his body silently each time he enters the pool. I am as much his daughter as another. He is as much a son as the boy I'm raising, as my father was, as all the boys are to the ones they're left to. My uncle is as loud as I imagine combat would be, saving me when I am in the Atlantic with my children, one stroke short of breath, his lesson, sink or swim, rushing back like a wartime memory. Baptism by fire, fear or love, whatever it was, it wouldn't reach the shore without it. That push into some uncertain end, reminding us the elements, like parents and lovers and orders, are just another arm of God to pass through. Mother necessity. He is concerned about the way words work. If his sister will be angry, if his father will. He asks me over homework if I've talked to them again. I tell him no one minds the word mom around here. But that's what I call my real mom too, he says. What if it gets confused? It won't, I tell him. She and I are never in the same place at the same time. He tries it out in a rhyme. Be calm, Mom, when he is late to bed or early morning howling up the stairs, and sometimes I forget who I've become. What a strange life this is. In part who you think you are, but mostly what others deem. Nameless, then newly named ghost of someone's dream.
We got the church hands again.
I'm telling you. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I think my question for you, Remica, is what's on your face right now? What can you articulate what's on your face?
Everything, because I'm trying to take in the poems. I'm also listening to the poems in real time that were written while my children were growing up. When I wrote this book, I wrote it to kind of flesh out all the things that were happening. My husband and I got married. It was Adwater instant family. He came with 3 kids. My son was 4, my daughter was 12, my brother-in-law was 16. And we all moved into a house in Virginia together, right? And now, just to give you context, that little 4-year-old boy who was in that poem that Adrian just read, it was like, can I call you mom? It's a little weird, but can I do it? He's like 16 now and about to graduate high school. So what's on my face is probably just the wonder of how much has changed in our lives since the writing of those poems. And like hearing some of those early difficulties. I don't know if we got like any blended families in the house, but I mean, some of those really early difficulties. There's a line in that poem where it says, don't worry about calling me mom. I know that's what you call your mom, but she and I are never in the same place at the same time. And we just all had our first family vacation together in December, like, which is really interesting to think, man, we've come so far, like literally, and I've become a different writer over time. So what's on my face is just like wonder and awe, I'm sure, right? At hearing the words done so beautifully, Adrian, and at thinking about what you can manifest for yourself and what we were trying to manifest, with these poems and that living for us and our children, is that we would just keep growing together. And it's happened, and we're grateful for that. Yeah, I appreciate y'all. I see my students in the chat. Hey, y'all.
So I just want to say before we go into the Q&A, there is a book giveaway, and I'm ready to announce the winner. So one of the attendees has won a copy of your book, Remica, and that person is Latina Ramsey. So congratulations, Latina Ramsey is getting a signed book by Remica, and Latina, please message me privately with your address, and we'll make sure that the book makes it to you. Congrats.
Thank you. Hey, Latina, we see you in the chat. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, everybody wins tonight.
Right. Right.
Indeed.
For sure.
And right before the Q&A, where can folks get your books? Where can they stay in touch with you? Follow you on social media, all those great things.
I see Hurston Wright has been doing due diligence, because I saw Jeff jump in and say, where can I get the book? Hey, Jeff. So they dropped in the link to Starlight and Error at Diode, but I'll drop in the link too. So my website is just remicabinghamrisher.com. I'm pretty active on social media, so I'll drop in like my Twitter handle. It's the same on IG. And so you can always jump in there. I have not been there in the DMs a whole lot, but if you jump in the DMs and say, hey, I was there last night, I will absolutely chat you up, because I'd love to hear from some folks, since Zoom keeps us together, but also we don't get a chance to like talk and mingle after. So I love to chit chat with folks. We can talk right now too. Of course, we're about to jump into a Q&A, but please keep in touch.
And I'll say, please take Remica up on that offer. Please follow her social media handles. I'm sure you will want to stay up to date when that soul culture drops. So, get you some soul. So, just
culture.
Stay connected with Remica to get updates on that. All right, so I think we are ready to turn it over to the audience. So I will be watching the chat, but the floor is open for anyone who
are people allowed to like put their hands up and ask real questions, like unmute themselves and ask real questions? Allowed?
Yes.
Yes. I think okay. So I'm gonna take my speaker view off and look at gallery view. Oh, there's so many people. Hey, Gina, I see you. Mm-hmm. Feel free to. I'm, super. Hey, Godbrother, I see you, Rochelle. These poems are super personal, and I am super nosy. So if people have like questions about like writing about the personal, or if you guys are writers and just want to talk about the journey, just talk about, writing a memoir, because that's another thing that's happening. Any question that you have, there are no bad questions. So please feel free to jump in. Well, DeAndrea, I see a hand. I see one of my students.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Professor.
Hey.
How are you? Nice to meet you all, by the way.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
With regards to like writing memoirs or autobiography works, how do you try to separate yourself or separate the material from it being too real or too revealing, or in some way, how can you not expose too much of yourself in your book?
Well, that's a good question, DeAndrea. And I know you are not only a poetry student, but a wonderful creative nonfiction writer. So I know that you're thinking about those things too. So I don't know. The truth is, I don't know if I think too hard about not revealing too much of myself. I will say, I am one of those people. There are some things that'll never show up in the book. And, for my first book that was called Conversion, there's a poem in it called Fish Fry. And I tell people all the time that poem used to be called Why I Wasn't Invited to the Last Fish Fry. I see you, Derrick. And that's because, people was like, oh, here she come with that notebook again. She gonna tell everybody business, hers, mine, this, right? And so I think I have started being very cognizant that my stories are often not my stories alone. And some of the ways, you heard a lot of those stories tonight. Some of the ways that I alleviate some fear about that is the people who show up in the book, I give them the poems and I give them the essays and memoirs in advance. Like Derrick was saying, Soul Culture, my memoir is coming out in August, and it's got lots of stories about my parents, lots of stories about Black poets that I interviewed and really learned a lot from. But I was insistent on making sure my parents got to see those essays well before they ever made their way into the book. And my daddy, who's here, hey, Daddy, I see you, just says what he always says, this is so great, sweetie. He really gave me genuine compliments, like he read it. And my mama started on page 1 with, listen, this not true. Let's fix this. You got this wrong. Your mama gonna get you straight about these family stories, right? But she was correct, first of all. And so, they are a great sounding board for me. And so more to your question, DeAndrea, I don't know if I censor myself, because I like reading things that are very real from other people. So those are also the things that I write, but I do try to at least be cognizant when I'm writing other people's story, that if it's not something they want to share, then I give it to them in advance and I make sure I take it out.
And I remember it too, I think on that, I think you had posted something about that on Facebook, and Frank X. Walker, the poet, former Kentucky Poet Laureate, he said that when his first manuscript came out, he did a similar thing, and his mom ended up taking his manuscript and red inking everything on there. But he was like, yeah, Remica, you ain't no fool.
Come on, if your mama say it ain't right, you better fix it. She's just gonna talk about you the whole book tour anyway. She's gonna tell everybody sitting next to her, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's not how it happened. So, you get the people who are the good sounding boards and you work from there. Thank you, DeAndrea.
Thank you, Professor.
I'm getting weird thank you. I'm getting weird feedback. So when you ask your question, ask it, and can you re-mute yourself? DeAndrea will be our guinea pig. Can you mute yourself so I can? Yes, because I wanted to make sure the feedback is not coming for everybody else too.
We have another question. Let's see, any hands?
Yeah, I'm scrolling through looking.
Yeah, I see people saying very sweet things in the chat.
Lots of encouragement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to ask a question of the actors really quickly if I could.
Yeah, bring them on.
Because I see that they're still here. They were given this work like cold. Like they were handed these poem sets. They were told, listen, you're gonna have to embody these poems in some way. And I'd just like to hear from each of them briefly, like how did they go? I'm pretty sure they hadn't seen the poems before. How did they go about interpreting it? Did they have any like tricks of the trade for when you're handed a script cold? We might have other actors and actresses here who might be interested. So I'm gonna start with Adrian, but if you can't unmute yourself and you're somewhere, please. Okay, I see Adrian, and then I'll jump to the other people that I see.
Yeah, just to start off with just beautiful source material, Remica, it's just such beautiful work. So it was easy to want to read it over, and that was my starting point, was just to continue reading it and try to make it personal to me as much as possible, so that I felt like I could find a way to embody it that felt like someone that I already felt like for reading it, it was someone I knew, but make it as close to me as possible as well, knowing that I was going to be the person interpreting it. And so I think that's where I started, but it's amazing to get to start with beautiful text and then to just kind of continue to dream and read and imagine. And I'm curious to know from you too, like when other actors get a chance to talk, like your process of that as well, like when you, especially if you know other people are going to read it, if you know like there's going to be a form like this, if you have thoughts about, how you provide that material or information that you provide to people when you turn it over.
Well, I'll jump in after and address that. That was perfect. Thank you, Adrienne. Also, the props were fire. I saw you pull on the props for Solstice. Good stuff. Jacqueline.
Method. I'm telling you. Go ahead with that.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hey.
My process really is all about truth, honesty, and how I'm feeling, as well as how the words make me feel. And so, and the story, of course, the story is always important, and you really gave a lot of stories in very few words, which I loved. And so just applying all of these things, emotions, right, honesty and truth, is just, and whatever I'm feeling in the moment. Sometimes it changes. Sometimes I'll rehearse it one way and then in the moment feel like, no, I don't want to cry here. I want to be angry. Or no, I don't want to be sad. I want to be happy. Like, and just adjusting to whatever and however I'm feeling in the moment.
That I love that. We all felt it in the moment. So we know you were acting off of how you felt in the moment. We love it. Hey, Karen.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi. So yes, definitely beautiful work, beautiful words. So when I got the poems, I definitely read them over several times. One, to kind of like familiarize myself with the words and the language, because I know that's very important with poetry. And then after that, to, as Jacqueline said, find the story behind the words, and also character and different beats, like where mood changes and transitions were. And I just love the way these poems read. They were pretty much like monologues. So it was no different. And I love the what she did with the rhymes in different places. So it was just great.
It was just great the way you did it. I appreciate that. Yeah, I really like heard your pausing in between a tone shift too. I thought, oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Just to follow up to answer Adrienne's question, I did try to think about a narrative arc. I didn't have a whole lot of time to second guess myself and get scared about handing it off to you guys, which was, kind of nice actually. But when, my second book is called What We Ask of Flesh, and that book is the basis for a full piece of dance by In Spirit Dance Company. Look, Derrick, Weston Brown, we've been friends so long, you have everything. So,
remember, I worked for a bookstore I buy it for a bookstore for almost 15 years. So
right. So you have all the books. Well, that was a book that Derrick was holding up. That's actually the galley. That's like for the people who was really on the inside. And so What We Ask of Flesh was turned into this really wonderful piece of dance that's been performed at the Kennedy Center and at Jacob's Pillow and all these different places. And we really had a back and forth about tone, about what the poems meant, about what I meant by that question. What do we ask of flesh? And how can I interpret that with my body? Crystal Brown is the head of that dance company, In Spirit Dance Company, and is a big advocate for the work. So that was a completely different process, Adrienne. It was really getting into the meat of the work and then letting the work fly, because the way other people interpret it and see it might not be at all how you were thinking about it. And she just took that question and kind of, turned it into, a million other things. So I'm very grateful when that happens too, when the work just serves as inspiration, because that's how I write, based on inspiration. If I'm not reading, if I'm not taking in other art, I'm not writing at all. It really gets to a point where I'll say, oh my gosh, like I can't get anything on the page. And my husband will say, what'd you read? And I'll say, oh, because it really is like filling the well. So when I'm taking those things in, he reminds me to fill the well in that way. And so, you know, just letting other art be the inspiration for the art we create. I mean, I think if we take nothing else from this night, that's a gift to us.
I'm writing that down.
And so I'll try to slide this question in real quick. So
Yeah.
talk about filling the well. So what are you filling your well with now? Like, I know you have Soul Culture getting ready to drop, but you know, what are you absorbing?
Ooh, I'm reading a whole lot right now, because now is kind of a lull in the writing. Summer's about to perk up, so that's a research time. So I get more writing done when I'm not teaching and I'm not having to do the administrative daily work as much as I do. I direct a program here at Old Dominion. So that's busy work. I just finished yesterday or the day before the Trayvon generation. Elizabeth Alexander has this new book of essays. Elizabeth Alexander is one of my heart of hearts. You know, we talk about the people that inspire us with their work and their living. Well, Elizabeth Alexander is one of those people for me. It's really beautiful, really sleek. But also, you know, I knew it was essays that, you know, kind of reckoned with this time that we're in and how we think about our children. But it also embeds these stories of visual art. You know, so there's really gorgeous work and kind of, you know, like context for artists like Kara Walker and all kinds of stuff. That stuff, the hybrid stuff, that is like you get visuals and you get text, you get poetry and you get fiction, you get like that's the kind of stuff that's feeding me deeply. Farah Jasmine Griffin's Read Until You Understand. That's another book that I've been sitting with a lot. I'm looking over because I have the books that I'm currently reading.
You have that pile? I got one too.
I got those piles right in front of me. Damaris Hill's Breath Better Spent just came out, a book of poems that also has images, really gorgeous. And I'm about to start Gary Jackson's origin story.
I'm reading that right now.
Are you? Listen, that was
awesome.
One of the things I had to get my hands on at AWP. So if anybody, you know, hey Gary, if you're out here in the world, I don't see you in here. But just know, you know, he's a poet that I just really love, and he really pivots in this book and writes about, you know, blended families, and so I'm terribly interested to see what other people are doing. So some of everything is the answer to the question. Some of everything.
Okay, well, I'm getting the shirt pull that we are close to time.
Sandman's coming. Sandman's coming.
But I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
I want to thank the actresses. I want to thank Remica. I want to thank Hurston Wright for this inaugural event. And yeah, that's all I have to say. I'll pass it over to Derrick in case Derrick has any last words.
Just thank you for everyone who attended. Thank you, Remica. And hey, for the first Words of Color, I think this was a smash. Tell folks about it.
Yeah.
There will be more.
Thank you, Hurston Wright. You guys stay on the lookout. Come back for the next one and the next one and the next one.
Yes.
Thank y'all. See you in the chat.